All the outrageous carelessness by law enforcement, 2 campus police women will be the gladiators who step in. At UC Berkeley, Philip Garrido is posting flyers about his wild religious beliefs all around the campus. With him, 2 young women who seem withdrawn, not happy. And after 18 years of law enforcement inertia, it would be campus police officers Lisa Campbell and Officer Allie Jacobs who say they simply didn't like what they saw.
One of the main things with me was the concern for the girls from a mother's standpoint. They weren't giving me any kind of sign that they were in trouble, but yet I felt that they were.
We knew that he was way out there, but we just didn't know what. We had no way of envisioning that it would be as big as it was.
The 2 women engaged Garrido in conversation, pretending to be interested in his delusional rant, and as soon as they could, ran to check who he was. They discovered in horror he is a sex offender.
And I'm thinking, he's on parole, he's huge, and he's got this record, this violent record. This is not going to be good.
Mother's instinct, female intuition, and cops just plain doing their job.
Just how incredible it is that they spoke up about something they thought was wrong. Even if they would have been wrong, they still spoke up. And they saved us. Something I couldn't do for myself.
By this time, August 2009, Jaycee Dugard had long since stopped looking at the moon as she used to do with her mother. It was just too painful. But mysteriously, this night,
for some reason, I looked up and the moon was just bright and beautiful.
And 120 miles away, someone else has also grown 18 years older. 18 years of searching, suffering, struggling to hold on to hope. Jaycee Dugard's mother also looks up.
I had gone to my second job and got home about 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I was tired and hungry and wore out. And I remember looking up at the moon, and then I said, "Okay, Jace, where are you? Where the hell are you?"
On August 26th, parole officers will summon Philip Garrido to come in. His family comes with him. But there's a problem. A frightened Dugard keeps sticking to the script Garrido has given her and keeps saying her name is Alyssa. The family is separated. The questioning continues. And surprisingly, late in the day, the first person to crack is Philip Garrido himself. For some reason, he confesses to kidnapping. It's not clear who. As he leaves, he first winks at her, and then with dead eyes says, "Get a lawyer." And it's at this point a police officer takes her aside and asks her kindly, repeatedly, "Who are you? What's your name?" Here, from her book, is what happens next. She asked for my name again. I said I couldn't say it. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I told her I hadn't said it in 18 years. I told her I would write it down. And that's what I did. You are looking at the piece of paper on which Jaycee Dugard, shakily, finally, wrote the letters of her name. Jaycee Lee Dugard. It was, she says, like breaking an evil spell. Your name.
My name. And it was like a piece of me came back.
And the flame that had been extinguished immediately reignites.
And they're like, "You can see your mom." And I'm like, I can see my mom? It was like a question to them, you know? I can?
You're at the office, the phone rings.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. And then it was disbelief. I thought, no, you're joking. Don't do this to me. This is not funny. And I remember
you shouting,
"Oh yeah,
found her! My daughter!" And I was crying, you know, when you're crying and you can't speak. Oh, I just said, "Come quick." I remember saying, come quick.
And I remember telling you, "I'm coming, baby, I'm coming."
And then I said something about having babies. I didn't mean I had babies. I meant I had babies. I didn't know what to say. It was like unbelievable.
And when you heard she had daughters?
Babies. Oh, I'm thinking, babies, okay. I can deal with this.
Those babies were by now 15 and 11. The first night, the police officer let them stay in a motel. Jaycee wants her mother and sister so much she can't sleep.
I woke the girls up and I just said, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I'm like, I can't wait anymore. I don't care if they're sleeping. And so I ran down the hall. I forgot the motel key. I walked in. I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
So happy. And stunningly, even now, 2 years later, with all that time lost, she insists life is too short for a moment of bitterness or rage.
I don't feel like I have this rage inside of me that's building.
Why not? How can you
Because
not?
I refuse to let him have that. He can't have me.
You mean if you felt rage, it would mean he had...
One.
I think I have enough hate in my heart for the both of us. I hate that he took her life away.
And that makes me sad.
I'm sorry, baby. I hate that. He stole her from me. He ripped out a piece of my heart. And, he stole my baby. He stole your childhood, he stole your adolescence, he stole high school proms and pictures and memories and...
But he didn't get all of me.
No.
Still to come, Jaycee Dugard's victory, her daughters, her plans for the future, and the things we can all learn from how she healed. And when we come back,
they hear a report their kids living in a backyard, and they're not curious at all. It seems impossible to common sense.
Chris Cuomo takes up a mother's challenge to track down those who let this happen and to see if anything has changed.
And there is a question we've been asking, and we suspect you are asking it too. 60 visits by parole officers to the house, and no one ever found her? How is it possible the justice system and the law enforcement system let her down so badly? Chris Cuomo is here now. He's going to investigate just this.
It is too important a question to leave unanswered. And when we come back, you will see just how many opportunities there were to save a stolen life.
As we return, the story of Jaycee Dugard. A convicted pedophile, Philip Garrido, and his wife Nancy stole her childhood, her name, and held her 18 years in a maze of shacks and tents. And as you'll see when we continue over and over again, she could have been saved.
How did you stay sane?
You just do what you have to do to survive.
2 times she will give birth in the backyard. 60 times the parole officers come to the house and see nothing. This is never-before-seen video of one officer missing what is right in front of him.
Right now I'm searching the house.
I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do.
I know it.
And now a Chris Cuomo investigation of a colossal failure.
Mr. Mesner, we just want to ask you a question. They hear a report their kids living in a backyard, and they're not curious at all. That's what I don't get. It seems impossible to common sense.
And what about Jaycee Dugard's life today? What does she see when she looks at her daughter? And more from the mother who wants changes to protect other families. The mother, the daughter who never gave up hope. And from a secret diary, a girl gets a chance to do what she always dreamed.
Good evening once again. I'm Diane Sawyer with Chris Cuomo, and this is the story of Jaycee Dugard, A Stolen Life. And as we continue, Chris is going to investigate the cascade of failures by the system supposed to protect her.
Diane, in the 18 years that Jaycee Dugard was held captive, there were so many failures of the American justice system, so many chances to catch the man who should have been a prisoner. So we set out to find the people involved. We called and wrote them, and when they wouldn't talk to us, we found them. And along the way, we found video, too, that's never been seen. Parole visits that were epic failures. Scenes that will chill you to the bone. Philip and Nancy Garrido are preparing to make a home movie you will not believe. It looks like the video will capture Philip Garrido playing a song on his guitar. But the guitar playing is just a ruse.
You need to make it look like you're pointing at me.
Look at where they are. Behind them is a playground. The Garridos are there to get shots of young children, to feed Philip Garrido's sick appetites.
You got me real good?
Yes, I can see you really good.
This is going on despite the fact that Philip Garrido is supposedly under the watchful eye of federal parole officers for his past history of sexual violence. Our investigation reveals that this is a metaphor for decades of neglect by state and federal parole officials, basically allowing Philip Garrido to do as he pleased, including taking Jaycee Dugard prisoner. Pain felt most sharply by the one person who never lost sight of the situation, Jaycee's mom.
How could anybody with a heart or a conscience or a soul, for that matter, take an innocent child away from its mother?
This is the first time Terry Probyn's searing words have been heard outside court. The pain and outrage she spoke directly to the Garridos, a mother who demands change.
I'm appalled. I'm disgusted, and something needs to change.
How much of the outrage goes to fixing this situation?
I think that's what it is. I think that's what fuels the fire, the outrage that I have, the anger that I have.
Garrido's terrifying career of sexual crimes begins in April 1972. Vietnam is raging. Students are protesting at UC Berkeley. And just 40 miles away in the small town of Antioch, 21-year-old Philip Garrido is waging a war of his own against young women, charged with drugging a 14-year-old girl and repeatedly raping her. The case is dropped after the victim refuses to testify, leaving Garrido free to strike again, and he does.
I just started screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God. That's him, that's the guy who kidnapped me."
News of Garrido's 2009 arrest brought back a flood of dark memories for Katie Calloway Hall. In November of 1976, Katie, then 25 years old, made the terrible mistake of giving a lift to Garrido outside South Lake Tahoe, California.
What I saw was a very tall, slender, normal-looking white male. He didn't look like what I thought a rapist would look like, obviously.
She was horribly wrong. Garrido hogtied and handcuffed Katie and drove her over 60 miles to Reno, Nevada, to a shed at this storage facility, where she says he repeatedly raped her over an 8-hour period.
He had just kind of a faraway look in his eyes. He looked at me like I was an object.
Katie was saved when a police officer on patrol noticed a broken lock on the shed and went inside to investigate. Garrido was soon sentenced to 50 years in federal prison for kidnapping and 5 years to life in Nevada for rape. Then came the first in a line of system failures. After serving just 11 of his 50-year sentence, Garrido is released after 2 parole examiners interview him for reportedly just 35 minutes. But Garrido wasn't a free man yet. He must serve his rape sentence in Nevada. But just 8 months later, a second failure. A Nevada parole board also decides to let Garrido out of prison. The reason? Not contributing to be a menace to the health, safety, and morals of society. These bizarre decisions were made decades ago. Our phone calls lead to dead ends or refusals to comment. So we followed the trail to State Prison Warden Brenda Burns, who signed off on Garrido's release. We found her in retirement, watering her lawn, and with little interest in the dreadful mistakes of the past.
We want to know why you released Philip Garrido so early from prison.
What the parole board does, they're the ones that release them, or their certain term is finished, and that's what the situation is.
Were you surprised when you heard that he kidnapped Jaycee Dugard?
You know, I'm never surprised with the human nature, okay?
August 1988, Garrido walks out of prison a free man, but he's now supposedly under intense federal supervision as a high-risk offender. Parole is supposed to be release conditioned on regular check-ins at home and the parole office. Federal officials actually tore Garrido's house in Antioch, discovering the hidden backyard with structures like this, eerily similar to the shed where he raped Katie Hall. Yet no alarms went off. Just a month after that visit, in June of 1991, Garrido kidnaps 11-year-old Jaycee Dugard outside her home in South Lake Tahoe, California, and stashes her in the backyard in that same shed. Years pass. Jaycee gives birth to Garrido's 2 daughters, and yet parole officers remain oblivious. To the former Inspector General of California who investigated what went wrong with Garrido's parole, this is outrageous.
A federal parole agent had not only been in the backyard, but had been inside what Garrido was calling a soundstage or a soundproof room for recording. So they knew it was there, so the federal government knew.
Then, in March 1999, another major failure. After just 11 years of supervision, federal probation officials again give Garrido a huge break, cutting short his parole for, of all things, good behavior. In this letter, senior U.S. probation officer Mark Messner thanks Garrido for his cooperation over this period of supervision and hopes that he will continue to do well.
Mr. Messner?
We pay Messner a visit to find out why Garrido's federal parole was cut short, given his violent and unstable background.
Mr. Messner, we just want to ask you a question.
Messner drives off without answering our questions. Could the federal government really ignore a situation like this? We sent letters to the head of the U.S. Parole Commission, to the United States Attorney General, to the Congressional Judiciary Committee, all asking why the federal government failed so miserably in its oversight of Philip Garrido. We received one response from the U.S. Parole Commission, which said it couldn't talk to us because it's still investigating the matter. But in fact, a federal investigation had already been completed months ago and was kept confidential. Fortunately, just this past Thursday, a U.S. district judge decided to release the report, which concluded Garrido's federal probation office did not follow commonly accepted supervision practices and had failed to adequately supervise Philip Garrido. Most chilling is this. One may fairly question whether Garrido could have been deterred from the horrendous acts attributed to him had his federal supervision been conducted properly. The report goes on to lay out necessary changes, but notes that previous recommendations had been ignored.
They say, we're working on it. Takes time, doing our best. This is government stuff, you don't get it. We'll change on our own time.
A fitting response from a mother still waiting for answers.
Get any calls from the Federal Bureau of Parole and all that, the corrections, they call you?
No.
They say sorry?
No.
They say we figured it out, doing it differently next time.
No, but that will be a battle within itself. I need change, and I need something to be different.
And this never-before-seen video will open eyes about how much change is needed. Come inside Garrido's home during an actual visit with a California parole official.
Right now I'm searching the house.
You'll see just how close officials got to discovering Garrido's secret.
I don't understand. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do.
I know it.
When we come back, find out how many chances authorities had to rescue Jaycee Dugard.
Okay, in this room here.
This is video California parole officials don't want you to see. Philip Garrido, bare-chested and brazen, leading an officer as he checks out Garrido's house. The officer's face was blurred by authorities to protect the identity of one of the many who failed to see what was right in front of them.
Okay, why is this door locked? Can you move that out and open the door?
The video is being shot by Garrido's wife, Nancy, who is helping her husband manipulate the visiting officer.
What does a parole agent do for his parolee?
Ma'am, you can come in the office and we'll discuss that.
The other
right
day,
at an appropriate time.
The other
right
guy,
now I'm doing a search. If you stay in this front room and I don't have to place you in restraints, because right now I'm searching the house.
Tough talk, but watch as the officer is distracted by the Garridos chattering about doing nothing wrong, and appears to follow the path Garrido lays out.
I understand. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do.
I know it.
If you got any further questions, come into the office.
We will
I'll be in
come.
there between 8 and 5. All right, and both of you guys can come in.
Well, he's an arrogant little guy, isn't he?
The officer seems to want to escape the pestering and leaves. If he had just walked into the backyard, he could have found Jaycee and her 2 helpless children. Instead, the Garridos find new confidence that they can evade authorities whenever they want.
When you look at 18 years of this, of like all these different tentacles of this system that's supposed to be in this business of watching people like this, what are your thoughts on it?
I think a lot of mistakes were made. I think Jace could have been home a lot sooner had somebody cared enough and slowed down to look at what was really going on.
Bottom line, at every level, the people who were supposed to watch Garrido failed. Our investigation reveals that almost no one wants to answer for the fact that officials either didn't know, didn't care, or didn't act to stop Philip Garrido and his wife Nancy.
Jaycee and her kids weren't hidden in some remote hideout. They were right behind that fence in that backyard. Maybe it's not so easily visible, but neighbors in 2006 said there were kids living in that backyard, and nothing happened. And probation officers had 60 home visits, but never discovered what was right behind that fence.
To trained law enforcement officers, it should have been evident that something was going on out behind the house.
David Shaw, the former California Inspector General, prepared a scathing 115-page report detailing a litany of failures by state parole officials. Top of the list, all the visits with Garrido by officials. Each yellow box marks a visit to Garrido's house, each one a missed opportunity. Parole officials never interviewed Garrido's neighbors, who had often spotted Jaycee and her 2 daughters. Agents also never questioned why there was a network of utility wires connecting the house to the backyard complex. Garrido was fitted for a GPS device in April 2008, tracking all movements. Each red dot marks his location and time. Look at how much time he was spending in the part of the backyard they never searched. Worst of all, says Shaw, Garrido often explained away reports and sightings of the children in his home by saying they were his brother's children.
It was very easy to dispel this story that he was telling. We called his brother and spoke to his brother, and the brother didn't have any children.
But one phone call, hello, brother of crazy Philip Garrido. Do you have kids? No? Thank you very much. Have a good day. Hang up the phone, go and arrest Philip Garrido and find out where the kids are.
Right. We thought that an agent could have dug just a little bit deeper and found out that those weren't his brother's children, and if not, then who do they belong to?
Meanwhile, over the years, Garrido apparently descended into madness. With wild ideas about hearing angels, he even developed a device to channel God's voice. Tim Allen, a contractor who bought business cards from Garrido, found the signs obvious.
Yeah, he would come in here and he was just rambling. I would tell the girls, hey, when you see Philip come in, tell him I'm not here.
Does it surprise you that they didn't pick up on what was going on with him?
Yes, it surprises me that as soon as you would talk to him, you would think, this is the guy that needs some help.
November 2006, perhaps the most egregious failure of all. A neighbor calls 911 and complains children are living in tents in Garrido's backyard. The caller also describes Garrido as psychotic with a sexual addiction. This time, it's not parole officers, but a sheriff's deputy who shows up at Garrido's house. But after a brief chat, the deputy turns and leaves, never even bothering to check out the backyard, despite the neighbor's complaint. We asked then Sheriff Warren Roop what went wrong.
Here, they hear a report that there are kids living in a backyard, and they're not curious at all.
Yes.
That's the whole reason he's there, is to look for kids in the backyard.
This comes back to, human flaw, pilot error. I am of the opinion that he should have had the professional curiosity to push beyond just a conversation on the front porch.
But how did he explain? You talked to this person, right?
I did not talk to this person, no.
As the sheriff, you never talked to your deputy about this?
I did not talk to this person.
Where was your professional curiosity, Sheriff? When you knew that this was your deputy, why didn't you say, I want to talk to this guy. I want to find out what was going on in his head that he didn't think to go into the backyard?
Those questions were asked. I mean, the fact that I did not personally talk to him is not, nor should not be seen as a lack of interest or a lack of curiosity.
But in fact, it is symptomatic of the neglect that contributed to Jaycee Dugard's 18-year nightmare. In no small irony, the officers who helped capture Garrido had nothing to do with his probation. 2 suspicious UC Berkeley campus officers checked up on Garrido after seeing him on campus with his 2 daughters. And that led to his arrest and Jaycee's rescue.
All of the forces that came together worked together for the good. And the result was that we found Jaycee 18 years later with her daughters alive.
Most importantly on that day was a curiosity that was uncommon in the case of Philip Garrido. The curiosity that it bothered you that the way he was and with these girls didn't work.
I think that it comes down to life experience, you know, having that woman's intuition, mother's intuition, work experience, life experience. Being in the right place at the right time and having all those things is what, you know, made this a happy ending.
Today we are joined by our...
Incredibly, after the arrest, California parole officials held a press conference to give themselves credit for cracking the case.
Very proud today to report the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation's parole division for their work in solving the 18-year-old mystery of the disappearance of Jaycee Lee Dugard.
These officials declined requests to sit in the chair and answer our questions. However, the former Inspector General's report painted a very different picture of their actions, an abject failure that demanded not celebration, but major reform in California's parole system. People have described the Jaycee Dugard case for the state system as the 9/11 of Homeland Security, that this was the big thing that we should have seen coming. Now everything must change. Fair analysis?
I think it's a decent analogy. Clearly, it woke everyone up in the system that something like this could go on with an offender who I think largely we had ignored in law enforcement.
In the wake of the Dugard case, California says changes have been made in line with Shaw's report, such as criminal background information being available to all law enforcement and specific training for how to check thoroughly on all sex offenders. The state also paid $20 million to the Dugard family to settle a claim that it had failed to properly supervise Garrido. But money is not what the Dugards want. There was a settlement. Was that enough? Feel better now?
No.
What matters more? What can't you put a price on?
The 18 years that I lost with her, the crap she went through, nobody can put a price on that.
It's not good enough that the Garridos are behind bars and will never see the light of day again. It's not good enough to tell me that change is coming. The battle's just begun.
And as you well know, Diane, Terry is just the woman to take on this fight.
And I want everyone to see this family today. Here's what's coming up when we come back.
You excited? Yeah.
Jaycee Dugard says you can redeem 18 years of stolen life and return from a chamber of horrors for body and mind. 2 years after her return, she says she knows it's better to laugh and cry than only cry. And as we said, she loves that it was her little sister Shayna, now 21, who had to teach her how to drive.
So tell me about learning to drive.
Oh
You
my
drive.
God, I do drive. I drive very safely. I go to park and I get out, I'm like, oh God, I did really good. And my mom's like, but look where you parked. And I was like, taking 2 spaces.
She even makes a wry joke about her impossibly young skin, saying, "How about years of no sun?"
Yeah, yeah. It's how to preserve yourself. That's the kind of humor I use to, get by.
She continues to receive therapy from Rebecca Bailey, a specialist in family reunification. Bailey teaches one way to vanquish the past is gratitude for the pleasures of the present day.
The peanut sauce on it.
Sometimes it's just remembering that you get to make dinner with a family and have real food instead of fast food, and nature. Horses, she cares for them as part of her therapy. Mystical, tangible symbols of trust. Animals don't lie.
I mean, maybe I believe in a higher power, but I believe in nature and what we see around us as healing.
And yes, she is remarkable. I will give that. I'm confident that the community and the support that she has put around her since she has come out will carry her through whatever bumps in the road she hits. And I think she has a lot to teach all of us.
She's even creating a foundation with some of the money the state gave her to help all members of families after trauma.
When something happens, they don't think about the whole family, like there's a sister and there's a mother and there's other components. It's not just the victim.
If you go online, you can find the foundation with Jaycee's symbol, the pine cone charm.
Diane, I want to give you this, and I want you to wear it with happiness. I don't know what else to say.
You don't have to say a single word.
Good.
And the girl who loves words and metaphors says maybe a GED, even college. And I ask her about something she wrote in a journal when she was captive, something that ended with happily ever after.
I want to find love one day, the kind of love I read about. Still want that?
I don't know. I don't really think about it. I'm happy the way my life is now. I mean, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, I'll still be happy.
But it doesn't seem impossible after what you've been through.
No, it doesn't seem impossible.
I think that the prediction of the future is not in my job, but I will tell you that whether there's a man in her life or not, this woman will love fully in her life. He has certainly infused fear, and he has certainly, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, there are things that he has taken away from her that she will never have back or get back.
But she has her daughters whom she loves. She is very protective of their privacy. And will say only that they're healthy, happy, wonderful students. In fact, so confident heading off to school, one of them said to her, "Mom, you're making me nervous." She also says they can make their own decision about whether to read the book, but they know what happened.
Their dad did strange things and they knew it. They lived that way for so long that I don't really think it was that big of a shock to them because they knew their dad.
It's interesting to hear you call him their dad.
He is what he is.
When you see his expressions, is it startling in your daughters?
Surprisingly, I don't see it in them. I see my mom. I see me. I don't see him.
But she admits at the beginning she was worried that her own mom would have trouble with children fathered by that man.
I don't see him in my granddaughters. No, it is not there. They are who they are, and they are so beautiful. And I'm very proud to be a grandma. I love those girls with all my heart. You don't even have to ask that, baby. No, they're mine.
And where are the Garridos? They pled guilty. Nancy Garrido sentenced to 34 years. Jaycee Dugard went to see her, was unmoved by her tears, and closed the door on her forever. And as we said, Philip Garrido was sentenced to 431 years. He sits on the same prison row as Charles Manson, in isolation in a tiny cell with a window covered with bars. If he is watching this, if he sees this, is there anything more either of you wants to say to him?
Can't steal anything else. Can't steal our love for each other.
No.
Couldn't take that away.
So in the battle between good and evil,
good wins.
Good wins.
Yep.
Before we left, Terry wanted to send a message to you about a morning more than 18 years ago when her little girl asked for a morning kiss.
I had been late to work 3 Monday mornings in a row, and I was focused on myself, trying to get myself out that door so I wouldn't be late for work. And I chose not to go in and kiss my girls goodbye that morning, wanting to be on time. And for 18 years, I kicked myself for not